Hi everyone, I'm Jim Rizoli. This is part of Rizoli TV, and we have a special feature of our show tonight. We're going to be talking to Fred Leuchter, and he's going to talk a little bit about where he's been since his days back in the 80s with Ernst Zundel and all those type of things there. We're going to learn a lot about him. It should be very informative for you. So I want to welcome Fred to the show here.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. This is a real special occasion for me, anyway, because I think of all the revisionists. Well, first of all, would you call yourself a revisionist?
I do now. I didn't 25 years ago.
Okay, all right. All right, so, but when you think about all the revisionists that are out there, especially the ones publishing and writing, you're probably one of the most famous ones.
I think that's probably true. And in those days, after I had been to Auschwitz and after I had testified in court, I considered myself a reluctant revisionist. Now, after the Jews beating on my head for 20 years, I'm not reluctant anymore.
I understand. But we're going to get into all that, so don't worry. Okay. But what I want to get an understanding of you is, I remember watching the video, Dr. Death.
Right.
And in that video, which I might even play the last clip of that video just to show people that clip. But in that video, it shows you at the end walking down the street.
Yes.
All right. Now that always interested me because, now I know you and I met you.
Right.
I always wondered what happened to that man walking down the street in that video. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And again, that video was done. What year was that done? Do you remember?
96 or 97.
Okay, so it was say like middle 90s.
Yeah.
So that's 20 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so from that time period, you walking down the street,
Right.
we knew nothing about you. No one knew anything. What happened to you? Where you been? Where you lived? I didn't even know that you were even living in Massachusetts. So basically, I would like to get into that. What happened since then to you in all the things that have transpired, from that? So that's what I want to get into. So maybe you can give us a little background of what happened from that time onward.
Oh, okay. Before I do that, I'd like to comment on something. I was at a revisionist meeting a number of years ago, well after everything had happened, and I got up on I didn't speak that time, but I got up on the podium because Willis Carto introduced me, and I got up and a number of people had told me that they thought I had died.
Oh, wow.
They had read someplace or what have you, and I quoted Mark Twain at that time from the podium, and I told them that how is it he worded it now? Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
You said that at the meeting?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
I would have loved to see that.
But anyway, after I testified in court, my life essentially was turned upside down. I was put through hell. I was prosecuted in court on a spurious charge of practicing as an engineer without a license. And one doesn't need a license. I don't believe in any single state to be an engineer. You only have to have a license if you certify blueprints. And I didn't do that. I was persecuted. I had my friends threatened. I lost job offers. I was effectively put out of business in my execution equipment business because the Department of Corrections were afraid to deal with me. People that work for the state, and particularly Department of Corrections, are political animals, and they were afraid. I had one warden. I was at a convention in the Midwest. It was actually in Missouri, and I walked into the coffee shop at the hotel, and there was a big curved coffee bar in the center, and I sat down opposite him, and I looked at him and I waved. He looked at me, he got up and he walked out of the room. And when I got back to my room, I had a phone call, and his secretary had called me, so I called her back, and she said, Warden so-and-so wanted me to apologize. She says, but there's been so much political pressure that she said he was afraid to be in the same room with you.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it was terrible. I had my house firebombed. I had my friends threatened. I was even followed by 2 Mossad agents who came over from Israel specifically to follow me around during the time of my trial. I was informed by my cousin, who had been informed by a gentleman who was the head of the Massachusetts State Police. And when we were younger, we grew up and we played with that gentleman who was the head of the State Police. At any rate, he called my cousin. He says, because of the fact that Freddie is facing the court now, I can't communicate with him. He says, but I'd like you to get a message to him. We've been advised by the State Department and by the CIA and by the FBI that there are 2 Mossad agents in Malden. We don't know what they're doing, but they're being watched. Well, I was unaware of this until she told me, and for about 3 or 4 days I was being followed, and I didn't know why I was being followed. Well, at any rate, after I found out the day following that, I was being followed again by a vehicle with tinted windows. I think it was a Cadillac or some such thing. And I got into a semi-rural part of Malden, and they followed me up the hill, and I spun my car out and blocked the road. At that point, I got out of the car and I went down to the window, and I pounded on the window of the driver's side. The gentleman rolled the window down. There were 2 very dark-complected. I guess they were Jews from Israel. They could have been Arabs, but
Right.
you know, they were Middle Eastern types. At that point, I reached inside my jacket and I pulled out a .45 caliber pistol, and I touched his nose with it, and I asked him what he wanted. Well, the 2 gentlemen in the car, as dark-complected as they were, turned white. And the next thing I know, they put the car into reverse, floored it, went up over the curb, hit somebody's fence, spun around, and took off down the street from whence they came. And I guess they didn't want some kind of an incident,
Right.
because I was legally carrying a firearm, I was legally protecting myself. They wouldn't have looked too good if in the news media.
Oh, absolutely.
And with the police, if they're foreign agents of a foreign government
Sure.
following somebody around.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was the last I saw of them. I
Right.
think they finally figured that I was a little too crazy to deal with.
Now, wait, what year was that about?
I must have been about 60, that must have been about 93,
Okay.
94.
Right.
It was before I went to California.
Okay.
And at any rate, I decided I had a job offer in California, so I decided to go to California. My ex-wife didn't want to go,
Okay.
and she stayed behind, and subsequently I went out there on my own, and that's where I met my current wife.
What did you do for work out there?
Well, I went out to a company who ran a man who ran a computer company, and he asked me to do some design work for him. While I was working for him doing design work, he was a Jewish gentleman, and he didn't care about my background, or so he said. But the fellow who was funding him, who owned the building that we were in, found out I was down there, and I think he kind of pulled the plug on everything. They locked me out of my office, and I was essentially standing on the street with no place to go. I was only there for, I was only there for 3 or 4 months. So at that point, I had already met my wife Terry, and I stayed with her, and we got an apartment till I came back. Came back before Christmas. I went back to Pennsylvania because fellow who I had worked for before had offered me a job. He needed some design work done on a communications device,
Okay.
which I did. And then we moved from there. I brought Terry and the kids to Pennsylvania, and then from Pennsylvania we moved back to Boston.
Okay.
I'm unemployable as an engineer. And nobody wants me because they're afraid of me. And I was never able to be employed again as an engineer.
Right.
I went to work as a driver at a homeless women's shelter. After I finished there, most of these places don't keep you very long because they don't want to give you a raise. You work
Right.
for 2 years, and
Right.
then they find some reason to let you go. Generally, it's we don't have any more work.
Mm.
So I went from there. I went to a company that took former drug and alcohol abusers to halfway houses, and I was there for a couple of years. And then from there, they let me go again because it was time for a raise. And then I went from there. I worked for a company that was an adjunct to the transportation system in the greater Boston area called The Ride, and I was taking older people and handicapped people to doctor's appointments, etc. After I was there for 6 years, I was time for another raise, and they determined that I shouldn't be there, so they let me go.
Now, what I'd like to ask you now is, I mean, that's happened since then.
Right.
But maybe we can tell the people watching this your tie-in with the revisionist movement with the Zundel case, and maybe you can explain to how all that happened to you. How you got, in other words, that's really how you got drawn into all this.
Yes. Well, I had been working as an engineer for some 35 years or so. I had basically been designing navigational equipment. I have several patents for surveying equipment. Many of the people watching have probably seen the surveyors out on the street with what they call the total station. It's that big yellow or orange transit that they now use, which digitizes all the information, and essentially it does all the drawings and everything, so it took a great deal of work off the surveyor. I designed the device that transmits the motion of the telescope, both horizontally and vertically, into digital information so it can be utilized by a computer. I never was able to do anything with that because the Swiss and the Japanese came over here. They paid $5 for a copy of my patent, and they proceeded to make instruments based on my patent. I didn't have, my pockets essentially weren't deep enough to engage in litigation.
So that's basically what they do, is they will just buy a patent and then they'll make it, and then they have millions of dollars, you have no money, they have the device.
Yes, my patent attorney told me that if I didn't have $500,000 to throw down the tube initially, don't even start.
Wow.
And I didn't have that kind of money. I mean, the patents are expensive. My last patent cost me $89,000.
Right.
But at any rate...
so your name wouldn't be associated with that patent at all?
Yes, well, it's on the patent, but it's not on the instruments.
Right, right, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then my father worked in the Massachusetts correctional system for over 40 years, and they passed a law in Massachusetts reinstating the electric chair. One of the officials at the state prison asked my father if I would come down and meet with them because he knew I was an electrical engineer, and they, quite frankly, they needed help in making their equipment functional. I met with them and I talked with them, and like everything else, the job kind of stalled because those things always occur 3 or 4 or 5 years after the legislation is passed, but at least they knew what they were doing. A year afterward, they passed legislation eliminating the death penalty in Massachusetts. So we have none, and we had none the year following that. However, because I had talked with the Massachusetts system, my name was passed around the other states that utilized capital punishment, and they began contacting me, and I began supplying bits and pieces of hardware until I was asked by the state of New Jersey to design a lethal injection machine. And I designed the machine. We supplied the machine not only to New Jersey, but to several other states. I supplied an electric chair to the state of Tennessee.
Now, do you have a patent on that, or?
No.
No.
There's not a big enough market to warrant a patent.
Okay.
And but at any rate, and because of that, I also had consulted with a number of states on their gas chamber. I consulted with Mississippi, I consulted with California, but at any rate, and I consulted with Missouri. Zundel was going, his first trial had been set aside, and they were retrying him again. And they were getting ready to go to trial, and Dr. Robert Forreston, who was an expert on World War II literature. When I say literature, I'm talking about documentation that was generated during the war by the powers that were fighting. He had been in touch with Ernst Zundel, and he told Zundel that the only way you're going to be able to do anything is you're going to have to get an expert on gas chambers to come in and talk about the gas chambers, the alleged gas chambers, and I say alleged because that's important, that were at Auschwitz and at Birkenau and at any of the other facilities. And since this was the case, they spoke with the court. The judge tentatively authorized them to find an expert. Dr. Forreston's next contact was with the states in the United States to find out who made execution equipment, and everybody sent them to me. Well, before he contacted me, he had a very long conversation with Bill Armentrout, who was the warden and later became the Commissioner of Correction in Missouri, and he was then directed to contact me. I was contacted, a little surreptitiously at first, because he asked me questions about my background, and then he asked me what I thought of the Holocaust and the gas chambers that were used to kill all the Jews during World War II. And I said, well, I don't know anything about them. He said, well, do you believe that they existed? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. They taught me that in school. At any rate, the court approved me as an expert, tentatively. I was brought to Toronto. I met with Doug Christie and Zundel and his legal team.
So this would have been what, 88 or that year?
Yeah, it was 88.
88.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I was given a lot of documentation. I had to do a lot of studying on the alleged concentration camps because I came in really wet behind the ears. I didn't know what was going on. But at any rate, after I got all this information absorbed, and I did a lot of studying on it, I also had a study on crematories. I had to find out how long it took to cremate a body with coal, how long it took to cremate a body with oil today, and there was a lot of material that I had to study, as would any engineer that's doing a job. They then cleared me to go to Poland. I told Ernst Zundel that if I found that the facilities could have been execution facilities, I would report that as such in my report. I told him that whether or not I found evidence, if I found that they could have done it, I would also report that. And Zundel said, I'm satisfied that you're going to come back and believe that there were no gas chambers. So I went to Poland. When I got to Poland, I was just totally amazed. I mean, the whole thing was a joke. There were no gas chambers. The facilities that were supposed to have been gas chambers were no more than rooms with leaky windows and leaking doors. If you ever tried to use one for a gas chamber, you'd have killed yourself while you were killing whoever was in the chamber. They say that there was equipment removed. There was nothing removed because from a design standpoint, there'd have to be holes in the walls, holes in the ceiling, holes in the floors. You have to have places where you got fans and ducts. And none of that was removed. None of that was patched up. The stuff just didn't exist. So I wrote a report, and I stated that I felt the facilities there in Poland not only were not gas execution facilities, but could not have been made into gas execution facilities. And I returned. I wrote the report. I testified in court. Now, when we got into court, it was really an interesting situation because the judge didn't want to admit the report. And this is a copy of the report.
Yeah, you can show that camera too.
This is the original report. There were 3 of them. I had one, and Zundel had one, and the court has the other one. At any rate, the judge refused to accept it as a report, even though he accepted the fact that I was qualified to do the report. So what we had to do, I had to take the stand, and for over 3 days I was questioned by Doug Christie, and everything in the report was entered into the record verbally. I read it from the report, and I qualified it by explaining what everything meant.
Now, did you read the whole thing, or just parts of it?
No, I was only allowed to read the parts relative to the gas chamber.
Okay, cool.
That's where the interesting part comes. The court found that I was an expert on execution equipment. It couldn't deny that because I was certified by the federal court system in the United States. But I wasn't an expert on crematories, so therefore none of my numbers on the crematories could be entered into the record by me. Doug Christie then sought out and got the top expert in Canada on crematories. That gentleman was given a copy of the report and he read it.
Do you remember his name?
No, I don't.
Okay.
His name is available, but I don't remember his name.
Isn't his name Ivan Legacy?
I think so, yes.
Ivan Legacy,
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And he did what I couldn't do, or what the court wouldn't allow me to do. He read my report into the court record verbatim. So no matter how you slice it, the judge didn't want it, but he got it all.
Okay.
And unfortunately, he choked on it. He found Ernst guilty, and subsequently, the Supreme Court in Canada overturned the verdict of the second trial.
Right. So he really didn't go to jail. He more or less was out waiting for the verdict, the last verdict.
Yes. Yeah. But unfortunately, they eventually got him.
Right. No, I know that. Yeah.
And subsequent to my going to Poland and then to Canada, Ernst Zundel's defense team sent me back to Europe again to examine other facilities, Dachau, Hartheim Castle, and Mauthausen. While I was on that trip, and the prime reason for my going on that trip, so I would be available in Germany to be voir dired. That's a legal term, it's Latin, but it means that they question you and your background to determine whether you're competent. And I was questioned by 3 judges on the Superior Court of, I believe it was Bavaria, and they determined after 3 days of questioning that I was competent to testify in a German court on the existence of gas chambers. And that was important because that's something that they were never able to do before, get the question of the gas chambers before the court. And after I was qualified, I then left and I went and looked at the other facilities, and I subsequently wrote reports on them for Ernst, and the reports are available through the Zundel website. But after doing that, while I was in Germany, I spoke at a number of locations. Spoke only about what I did in terms of my investigation for the court. Only spoke about how I was persecuted by the Jews afterward, how they firebombed my house, how the Mossad chased me, and all of the information that we've already talked about. And after I had returned to the United States, I didn't realize it, and unbeknownst to me, they were plotting in Germany, certain parties were plotting in Germany, to bring me back and charge me with breaking the law. And the law that I broke was called defaming the dead. And you defamed the dead by saying that the gas chambers didn't exist. Now, I was very careful about everything I said in Germany, so I never said that the gas chambers didn't exist. I said my testimony in Canada was that the gas chambers didn't exist, and how I was persecuted. But I was very careful never to violate German law.
Well, wouldn't they have arrested you there if you said something?
Probably.
Okay.
But you see, the problem was I was never arrested.
Right.
I was contacted by a television show called the Schweinemacher Show. It's a woman TV personality. Her name is Frau Schweinemacher. She has a show in Cologne, Köln, as the Germans call it, a television show. And the Germans are crazy for information about the electric Stühle, which is the electric chair. I was asked to come over and talk about the electric chair. I made it very clear to the people that contacted me, her writers and her producers, that I would not discuss the Holocaust. I would not discuss the gas chambers at Auschwitz or what have you. I would only discuss the electric chair and its application in the United States. That's what she wanted. But unbeknownst to me, again, she made a deal with the police in Weinheim, Germany. I didn't know this. I arrived, and just before I went on camera, I was approached by 3 German police officers from Weinheim. One of them spoke English, not well, but his English was better than my German. The other 2 gentlemen didn't speak any English at all. And I was told that I was going to have to go back to Weinheim with them and face trial in Mannheim because of what I said about the gas chambers. And I said, what have I said and where have I said it? Well, I said it in Canada. Well, I said, how do you get jurisdiction in Canada? When I said, I'm an official of the court. How do you interfere with a legal system in Canada?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't seem to make any difference. I said, all right, I said, I assume you have a warrant. Let me see your warrant. Well, we don't have a warrant. I said, what do you mean you don't have a warrant? I said, how do you expect to make an arrest? Well, we're not making an arrest. I says, then what are you doing? He says, we're going to take you back to see a judge in Mannheim. I says, like hell you're going to take me back to see a judge in Mannheim. I said, I came over here to be on a television show. At which point he pulled his Walther 380 out and stuck it in front of my face and told me that I would be required to go back. I said, okay, that's the case. I'm not going to argue. You know, I can stop a 380 like anybody else can, and I didn't feel like being dead. So I was handcuffed at that point, and I was taken across 3 states by police officers that were violating their own laws.
Wow.
Because I was essentially kidnapped, not arrested.
Right.
And Schweinemacher threw a fit because she told the cops, you promised he could be on television.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're taking him before he what? I said, sure, let me on television. I was about to tell the world on her national hookup that I was being kidnapped at gunpoint. And they weren't about to let that happen.
Oh, jeez.
So, at any rate, we drove through half the night, and I wound up getting fingerprinted, mug shots taken. First time that ever happened to me, probably the last time it ever happened to me. And I was thrown in a cell. The following morning, I was taken from there to the courthouse, and the information of my being taken, and I don't want to say arrest, but nobody knew I wasn't arrested except me and my ex-wife, because she was there. And at any rate, I was taken to the court, and Zundel had made arrangements for an attorney to come. And the attorney made an argument, but it didn't do any good. The judge just threw me into a cell at the Mannheim prison.
Oh.
They have a wing of unconvicteds that are waiting trial, and that's where I wound up. The judge, incidentally, was Richard Bauer. He was Jewish, so I explained to him, and I complained to him that I was taken without warrant. He says it doesn't matter. He says, I got you here now.
Wow.
So at any rate, I was thrown into a cell, and I spent some 3.5 months there. Wow. While my attorney I had the attorney that I first had was Zundel's attorney, and I subsequently was put in touch with another attorney who handled my case from there on out, Hio Hammond, whom I believe has subsequently passed away.
Okay.
Hio was he was he had very strong feelings about people that were held and put in prison for thought crimes,
right,
which essentially is what happened to me. Hio was a German soldier during World War II on the Eastern Front, and he spent 11 years in a communist prison before he was released after
wow,
the war. So he became a lawyer so we could prevent that from happening again.
Wow.
And it took him 2.5 months, almost 3 months after that, but he finally got me a bail hearing. And I was subsequently handcuffed, taken out in a prison bus. The bus was very interesting because it had little rooms the size of, half the size of a telephone booth, and I was squeezed into it, and then the door was closed.
Like individual rooms in
Yes,
the bus.
yeah.
I get it.
And then after I arrived there, I went before a 3-judge panel that was going to decide on whether or not I would get bail. Hio Hammond made all his arguments, and I hadn't said anything. I was then given the opportunity to speak. I spoke briefly, and the judges said, well, we don't have to go any further. We're going to remand you without bail. And this is all going on in German. So, and my German is not good, but, I obviously had figured out at this point that I'm going back to the slammer.
Yeah.
So I turned around to Hio Hammond and I said, what the hell kind of kangaroo court is this? I said, they haven't given me an opportunity to speak. I said, I'm a responsible individual. Well, the judge at that point stopped the proceedings. He said to Hio Hammond in German, what's your client's problem? And then he said, never mind. He turned around and he said to me in perfect English, they all understood perfect English.
Yeah.
He said to me, do you have a problem with what we're doing here? And I looked at him and I said, you damn well know I got a problem with what you're doing here. I said, I'm a responsible business person. I said, I came over to your country for a television show. I said, I was seized at gunpoint, illegally transported across the 6 states against your own laws. And now I'm waiting bail so I can go home. And the judge says, well, if we gave you bail, would you come back? And I says, of course I'd come back. So they said, give us a few minutes to deliberate. They went back, they come out 10 minutes later, and they said, they're giving me bail. Now they got to do something with me while they're waiting for the bail, because Hio Hammond contacted his contact for Zundel, and Zundel had to post the bail. I was effectively bailed for something in the vicinity of $22,000.
Wow.
Okay. Oh yeah, I was a master criminal.
Wow, what a record.
So yeah. So anyway, at that point, the judges called us into chambers. Now we're in chambers. They ordered coffee and cakes, and I'm eating cakes and drinking coffee with the judges. I mean, you can see where their sympathies lay. Okay. Afterward, I went back to the prison. I got my belongings. I got my passport and everything. And I told Hio Hammond, I said, I want the next plane out of here. And he said, well, there's a couple, would like you to stay a couple of more days because there are some people who would like to hear you speak. And I said, I'm not staying. I said, I want to be on the next plane. So I did get on the next plane. I came home, and that was fine after I got home. I was in touch with Hio Hammond, and I had plans to go back and face trial something along a year. I think it was going to be the following February. Well, as the time ran, it went by. He had been in touch with me, and about a week before he called, and I said, yeah, I'll make arrangements and I'll get a ticket and I'll see you on such and such a date. Well, while I was in prison, and prisoners, as most people know, stick together. Mm-hmm. I had a prisoner who used to feed me. He was called a shansa, and he brought the food to all the cells. And he used to talk to me sometime because I was effectively held in solitary confinement the whole time I was there because I was what in this country they call a protective custody in BC because they were afraid somebody might try to kill me. And I got a call from an attorney who told me, he said, this call never is taking place. He said, I was asked to call you by, and he told me the person whose name I won't mention, who was the Shansa, and he said he wanted me to tell you, don't come back. He said, the day after you left, your bail was revoked. There's an arrest on sight warrant out on you. The judges were fired. Yeah. And the Jewish mafia have got a contract out on you. You won't last several days in the prison. He said, I told you what I was asked to tell you. This conversation never took place. And he hung up. So I told my attorney, and I said, I'm not coming back. He said, Fred, you got to come back. I said, no. He says, that couldn't possibly have happened. He says, they can't revoke your bail without telling me. He said, they can't, they couldn't fire the judges. He says, I would have to be served with the arrest warrant.
Wow.
Okay. I said, well, I'm not coming back. I got a call back later the following day after he'd been to court. He said, Fred, I don't know what to say. He says, everything happened exactly what you said. The judges were fired. He said, there was an arrest warrant out on you, arrest on sight. And he said, the court apologized for not sending any paperwork. It must have slipped through the cracks.
Wow.
See, they wanted to get their hands on me and they wanted me to come back.
Yeah.
So.
Now, what would have happened if you went back and you obviously would have been convicted?
I would have I'd done 7 to 10 years in prison.
My goodness. And it would have been for that law, desecrating the dead or whatever.
No, defaming the dead.
Defaming the dead.
Now, one of the interesting things that happened to me, or several of them that happened to me, most of the guards liked me and talked to me. They were not, they didn't treat me like a criminal.
Right.
I may have been incarcerated in their prison wing, but I mean, they didn't treat me like another criminal.
Right.
I mean, because obviously I wasn't. Most of them were Germans, and they probably didn't like what was going on anyway.
Right.
But at any rate, when I first got in there, they issued me prison clothes, dungarees and a denim shirt, and I was supposed to put it on. And I told the guard I absolutely refused to wear your clothes. I had my clothes. I had 2 pairs of pants, I had 2 shirts, and I had 2 changes of socks. And that's what I was going to be using. So the deputy warden came down, and he told me, you have to wear prison clothes. And I told him, I says, I am not going to wear your lousy clothes. I says, let me explain something to you. I said, these clothes, and I took my shirt, and I said, these are my only connection with the outside. As far as I'm concerned, I don't belong in here. And I says, I'm not taking these clothes off and putting your prison clothes on. And I says, you may get them off me. I says, but I'm going to tell you right now, you and the rest of your people are going to know you've been in one hell of a fight.
Right.
So he looked at me, and he didn't quite know how to deal with that. He turned around to the guard and he says, does he keep himself clean? And the guard says he washes his underwear and his socks every day, and he changes his clothes every day. He said, let him wear what he's wearing.
No.
I won round one anyway. So then at another point, I had people pounding on my door at 3 o'clock in the morning. The security in the prison was terrible. People from the convicted wing used to come through. They all had keys. I don't know how they could do this. And they'd be pounding on my door at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me that they're going to kill me. I said, obviously they were Jews.
Wow.
So I had an extra broom pole that I had because they changed cells on me when I first got there. And I whittled down the end of the broom pole, and I made myself a spear. And every time they opened the door, I was waiting with the spear, and the guards would look at it. They knew what was going on, so the guards didn't, nobody was worried I was going to stab anybody. They knew I was going to stab somebody that come in after me. So I went on that way for over a month. And every time they opened the door, I was standing there with the spear ready to lunge. At any rate, there was a shakedown in the prison, just like they do in the United States.
Yeah.
Periodically, they go through and they toss everybody's cell looking for drugs, weapons, whatever. And the lieutenant came down, and that was the first time I ever met the lieutenant. He introduced himself. They threw everybody's clothes and furniture and everything out onto the tier. He just put his hands under my clothes, didn't disturb anything, apologized for the inconvenience, and thanked me. And again, he didn't consider me a criminal.
Right.
Just on a way out, he looked down and he saw under the sink my spear. And he says, he turned around to the guard and he says, what's that, in German? The guard looked at it and he got a little red face because he didn't know quite what to say. And in German, he said, it's Lucha's weapon. So the guard looked at him and he looked at me and he says, I don't want to know, in German. And he turned around and he walked out. Obviously, they weren't afraid.
Right.
They weren't afraid that I was going to use it on them.
Right.
They understood what was going on.
Yeah.
So they understood that why I had a weapon.
Right.
But I spent most of my time in solitary, except on Sunday night late, around 10 o'clock, an hour before they locked us up. They let me go down and sit in a room with the fellow that fed us, the Schanzer. And he used to make coffee, and I'd sit and have a cup of coffee and talk with him. I had the total 3.5 months I was there. I got exactly 2 showers, and that's because they were afraid to let me out of the cell.
Oh, wow.
When they did send me down to get the shower, they sent me down with a couple of right-wing skinheads.
Oh, good.
Who
Yeah.
happened to like me,
Right.
so nobody was
Yeah.
going to hurt me when I
Wow.
went down.
Wow.
And as I said, the security in the place was crazy, and in one respect, they'd sent me down to the shower with these right-wing skinheads. But yet, when I went to see my lawyer or I went to the doctor, they just turned me loose and let me walk across the prison yard with everybody in there.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it was a crazy place. It's one of those places that that old joke: who's running the mental institution? The inmates. Well, crazy people were running their stupid prison.
Now, when you did you stop in England? Did you stop in England before you come to the United States? Did something happen in England?
Yes. When I went over there, the time I went over there to be qualified by the court, and I viewed Dachau and Mauthausen and Haddam Castle. I stopped in England. I was supposed to speak at a history club that David Irving was a member. He was the one who set it up, and unbeknownst to me, I had received a letter from somebody saying that I was persona non grata in England, and if I went there, I would be deported. But I gave it to my attorney, and my attorney spoke with the consul and also the ambassador, and they said there was no such information on it. Well, apparently there wasn't, and it was a case of the right hand not knowing what the left hand was doing. But we drove and took the ferry, and when we got to England, fortunately we got there a day early, and I was able to get down. The only thing I was able to do that was enjoyable was I saw Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then when I got back the following night, we were in the my wife was in the audience, and I got up to speak at the meeting of the historical group. We're in a hall in Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
David Irving came up just as I started to speak and said there was some gentleman waiting to talk to you off the side. And I look off the side, and there's a bunch of cops out there. Right, oh, what's this? So I said, well, what's going to happen? They said, well, maybe you better talk to them. So David Irving stood up and he said, the police are asking to see Fred Leuchter. So I went out to the hall, and I had the chief inspector, or the commissioner, who was in charge of like a captain in this country, was in charge of the station, the Chelsea station, and he told me, he said they got a complaint. He said he says we're a little unclear on the paperwork. He said we don't know where it came from, but he said I got a call from the Home Office, which is they give us a direction, and I was told to detain you. So he says I'm going to have to take you to the station. So I said, well, what about my wife out there? And he said, don't worry about her, I'll get her. He drove her to the station personally. They were being very affable. I got out, and there must have been 8 or 10 Barbies inside this prison van that they got me in. And I'm sitting in the van. They didn't handcuff me, they didn't do anything. As soon as they closed the doors and we drove off, and the chief inspector was out of the way, all the cops jumped up and shook hands with me because I made execution equipment.
They were fans.
Yeah, they were all fans, yes. So I got to the station, and I was allowed to stay in the lobby with my wife. So I was out in the front of the police station until they changed, the guard changed at 1 o'clock in the morning. At 1 o'clock in the morning, a new captain came on, and he decided that I shouldn't be out there because he said criminals are people that are detained are supposed to be in cells. He didn't know who I was, didn't care. So they threw me in a cell. Threw me in a cell with a psychopath who's in there for assault with a deadly weapon. He's already hurt a number of people. He put him in, so I'm in there with him, and he asked me what I was in there for. So I told him. Well, he said, what the hell are these people doing? He said, we have freedom of speech in England. What do they think they're doing to you? So I'm not going to get hurt with him. Obviously, he likes me. Yeah. They pull me out again and put me in another cell. They put me in another cell this time with somebody that wasn't as dangerous. Right. This poor kid that they put me in with, he was a snatch and grab crook. Yeah. Okay, and he was crying to me. He said, it shouldn't have happened. He used to go into department stores, he'd grab a television and run. One of these guys. Well, it was Christmas time, and it was just before Christmas, and they had this beautiful gold Buddha that they had on display. He thought it was just a display, he thought it was nice. He decided to get it for his girlfriend. He grabbed it, and they caught him at the door. And he says, I never took anything in my life that was expensive. It was worth 120 pounds, 120,000 pounds.
Oh my goodness!
You're right. And they had special guards guarding it, although you couldn't see them. He just grabbed it and ran. He said, "They should never put out something that's that expensive in front of me." Well, anyway, and when the morning came, I was then pulled out of my cell at 2 o'clock in the morning by a couple of idiot immigration officers. And they took me in a little room, turned a tape recorder on, and proceeded to give me the 3rd degree. And, I said, what are you people, crazy? I said, I came over here to speak. I said, what do you think, I'm some kind of a subversive?
Right, yeah.
I said, you people, ridiculous. They questioned me till 4 o'clock in the morning with the typical good cop, bad cop technique that didn't get them anything. Okay, so finally they left, and I was put back in my cell. Well, I'm in a cell. They fed everybody in the cell that was going out to court, but I'm not going out to court. I don't even get a cup of coffee. Okay. The snatch and grab kid, he starts pounding on the bars, screaming his head off, and the cops come over and they say, what do you want? And he points to me and he says, give my mate coffee. So I got coffee and a banger for breakfast. But they were going to leave me there because they didn't know what to do with me.
Wow.
I didn't exist on paper yet.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, then at 7 o'clock in the morning, another agent shows up from Her Majesty's Immigration Service. And he takes me in the room and he starts to talk to me. And he said, you know why I'm here? And I said, no, why are you here? I said, I've just been questioned for the last 4 hours. And he says, yeah, I know. He said, unfortunately, I saw the tapes. He said, that's why I'm here. He says, you made a formal request to be sent home. I said, you're damn right I did. He said, well, I'm going to send you home at Her Majesty's expense. I said, okay. He said, they never should have done what they did to you. He said, they're violating our laws.
Yeah.
He said, get something straight. He said, I don't know who you are. He said, I don't like you. He said, I don't dislike you. He said, I could care less. He said, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let these people violate our laws for whatever reason.
Right.
He said, that shouldn't have happened. He said, you know what's planned for you? And I said, no, what was planned for me? He said, under international law, he says, you requested to go home, and we should have sent you home. But they were going under a different section of the law that if you hadn't asked, they're going to deport you back where you came from.
Oh,
he said, well, you came from France. He said, we'd ask you to France. He says, we have 3 days to a week for France to refuse you. And he says, France would have refused you because you don't belong in France. He said, then prior to that, you went into Belgium to get to France. He said, you would have been given to Belgium. Belgium would have refused you. He said, then you would have been offered to Germany. Germany would have refused you. He said, by the time this was done, he says, you'd have been in a cell for about 25 days.
Wow.
He said, but you're going home today.
Wow. So basically, would you say that was the Jews harassing you?
Yes, yeah.
Just trying to get back at you?
Very definitely. Of course, it didn't do them any good.
Yeah.
But as I said, they finally put me on an airplane, and they sent my wife and I home at Her Majesty's expense. We didn't even get to use our tickets.
Now, if you went to Germany today, would you be arrested?
Yes.
Okay, so you really can't go out of the country, right, or what?
No, and I can't even go to Canada.
Okay, so you probably can't go to any of the 18 countries that are banned. The Holocaust denial is banned or something.
Yeah, I can't go to any of the countries that are affiliated with the European Common Market or whatever. Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that the Common Market is more than just an economic alliance.
Right.
There's a criminal alliance that goes with it. The fellow who sent the message to me not to come back, his brother lived in Portugal. He was a German. He went to Portugal to visit his brother. 7 people were murdered in his brother's apartment. Okay. He was arrested in Portugal in an investigation and charged with murder. After they investigated, they determined that he had nothing to do with the murder, so they let him go, and he went back to Germany. When he got back to Germany, the German officials arrested him and threw him into jail, and they're trying him for murder. And he said, but I was exonerated by the Portuguese police, and it doesn't make any difference. The Portuguese police aren't going to come to Germany to testify for him because somebody has to pay them to do that. He didn't have any money to pay them to do that, but he's being prosecuted in Germany because Portugal is part of the common market. You know, so
wow, that's something.
yes.
Are you on a no-fly list in the United
I
States?
don't know.
Because
That
you
I
haven't
don't
been
know. No.
you haven't been flying. Okay, Fred, I do have some questions I would like to ask you about your Leuchter report. Now this is dealing. Is this 2 reports or 1 report?
This is one report.
Okay, 1 report.
This was the original report that was done for the court in Toronto. It's entitled An Engineering Report on the Alleged Execution Gas Chambers at Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Majdanek, Poland, dated April 5, 1988.
Okay. Now the questions I have in there about let's deal with Krema 1 in Auschwitz. Right. You went in that building, right?
Right.
Okay. And maybe you could explain, you know, to the viewing audience, if they say that first of all, explain to me how they would have said it worked. Okay, they claim they have these Zyklon pellets.
Right.
Right. They throw them into the hole,
Right.
and it goes on the ground. How does it work? How would it work according to their way of going here?
Trouble is, they don't know how Zyklon B works, and the people that came up with the procedure that supposedly worked couldn't possibly work. Let's talk about Zyklon B for a moment so we know what it is.
Yeah.
Prior to World War II, all during the 30s and in the 20s, they used to fumigate with hydrogen cyanide gas. The Germans improved things, and they've been well known for their scientific advances, etc. They wanted to come up with a better way to handle hydrogen cyanide gas so you wouldn't kill yourself. Normally what happened was you generated the gas on site. The gas fumigated where you were, then you vented it or opened it up. They did it with houses, they did it with factories, etc. They would simply throw sodium cyanide into dilute sulfuric acid and water mixture, and they'd cover the building with a tent. They'd let the gas be generated. A day later, they took the tent down. They wore masks so they didn't hurt themselves, and they'd air the place out. Well, what the Germans did is they took the gas after they made it. They made it at the factory instead of making it on site, and they allowed the gas to be absorbed in chalk pellets. It was either mine chalk or sometimes they used crushed up seashells.
It could be gypsum.
Yeah, it is gypsum.
Okay.
It got absorbed in that.
Okay.
Now, in order to get it out of the pellets, you have to blow hot air through the pellets.
Okay.
It was designed they designed it for use in chambers that they use for fumigating, which they had a furnace that went by oil or coal or some other method. They put the Zyklon B pellets in like a big strainer. It was a container that held the pellets. They forced hot air with the blower up through the pellets. The gas, the absorbed gas that was in the pellets now becomes gas again. It's a procedure that chemists call sublimation.
Right. Now, can you see this, the gas, or is it it's invisible?
No, you can see it.
So in other words, it becomes like a mist, a white mist.
It becomes like a cloud.
Cloud. Okay.
Yeah,
cloud.
and if you don't blow it, which is what they do in the fumigation chambers, they had the stove at one end. They sublimated the gas in the stove, and they had blowers that blew it through all the clothes that were hanging.
Right.
And there was a door at one end and a door at the other end. The same thing they did in the U.S. space program when the people come back from the moon. They went in one door, they were decontaminated, and they came out the other door.
Right.
And that's what they did. They put the clothes in one end, they fumigated it, and they took the clothes out the other end.
Okay.
And it was an easy way to handle hydrogen cyanide. They had a tall
Right.
stack on the thing, and they fumigated it for several. They exhausted the gas.
Yeah.
They blew fresh air in for several
All
hours.
right, let me ask you this
Yeah.
though. With the Zyklon B pellets that they had,
Right.
how long? Okay, say they dump them on the because
Right.
they say they put them on the ground.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how that would work on the ground. I mean, how if you put these pellets on the ground, how would it give off gas? You have to blow the hot air over.
That's correct. And presumably what happened at Kreml 1, that's at Auschwitz, they had this long room, which was actually a morgue.
Right.
It was a Leichenkeller.
Mhm.
They had these holes in the roof. They were like vents.
Right.
And they took the covers off them, and the SS officers, now remember, you can't touch
Right,
Zyklon B.
right.
They were taking handfuls of it and throwing it down through these holes, went down on the floor, then presumably the gas went up and killed them. Well, in the first place, this is out in the middle of the Polish countryside.
Right.
When these executions all took place was in wintertime, so it was cold.
Right. So that couldn't happen.
So the gas chamber itself, or the room that they call the gas chamber, was actually the morgue. It was probably below zero.
Right. Yeah.
So you're not going to sublimate any gas
Right.
in here.
Right.
Plus the fact, let's assume you could sublimate the
Yeah.
gas. Okay. These people that were presumably put into the chamber, were put in unrestrained.
Right.
Which means that they could cause a spark. They got hobnails in their boots.
Right.
They got, any one of a number of ways they could make a spark.
Right.
The gas is extremely explosive.
Okay.
So if they made a spark, and I'll tell you something, if I was going to be gassed with 500 other people, I'd make a spark and blow the room apart. Well, and
Right,
you can be sure they would have done the same
Right.
thing.
But of course, they're going to say though that people had no clothes on, right? So they're not going to have any metal on them or anything. So they're going to have no clothes on. But they do have lights in there, right? You have a light.
They want explosion proof.
They want to
That's
close. So I mean, but you could just break the light and then spark.
it. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I
They
mean,
didn't have any explosion-proof
Yeah.
lights. None of the doors were pressurized doors.
Right.
So I mean, it was just a joke. Now there was a little difference in the procedure that was used in Kremers 2 and 3
Right.
at Birkenau. They allegedly had a metal cage that came down inside, and they filled the cage with Zyklon B. Another brilliant idea, because if you pack the cage with Zyklon B, everything is compressed together.
Right.
You'd never get anything out of it.
Right.
So I mean, the whole thing is a joke.
Right.
These facilities could not have been used for gas execution.
Right. That was Krima 1.
We should probably sit closer together, right?
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
That's Krima 1.
Yes.
And then you had the other the Krima 4 and 5, and
Yeah.
of course they blew those up, right? Those are the ones that blown up.
Yeah. Krema 2 and Krema 3 were full-fledged buildings with crematories. They had basements.
Right.
They even had a conveyor belt for moving bodies around.
Right.
They weren't execution facilities. Krema 3 and Krema 4 were brick buildings that were on one level. They had normal windows in them.
Yeah.
They certainly couldn't have been used for gas chambers either. Those buildings, the only thing left is the floors, which was a poured concrete slab, and a few bricks on the corners and stuff, because the local Poles robbed all the bricks
Right.
after the war. Now, if we go back to Krema 2 and Krema 3, they were allegedly destroyed by the SS before they evacuated the camp.
Right.
And they may well have been destroyed by the SS before they evacuated the camp, because, I mean, quite frankly, if I was evacuating someplace and the enemy was coming, I don't want the Russians to get what I had. I'm going to blow the buildings up anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, but those facilities were made. They were full crematories with morgues, and I mean, you have to remember that all hospitals all public buildings where people lived, all had crematories in Europe.
Right.
They didn't have long before
Right.
they ran out of cemetery room.
Right.
So it was standard procedure to cremate everybody.
Right. That was normal procedure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why they have them. I mean, they point to these things and they say, these people have these things. Well, yeah, they have them because they didn't have any cemeteries.
Right. Right. Now, you didn't go to Treblinka or any of those, did you?
No.
Okay, so you only went to the camps that you mentioned.
There's nothing there.
Right. No, I know. There's really nothing there. Have you seen the last video by David Irving? He actually was talking about Treblinka, and he actually was thinking that millions of people were killed there, and I just don't understand how he could come to that conclusion.
He's done the same thing that Mark Webber has done. They're talking about limited gassings.
Right.
Absolutely impossible. With the technology that the SS had,
Right.
they were not capable. They couldn't do a competent gas execution. They couldn't execute one person,
Right.
let alone
Right.
thousands.
Yeah.
And with all the stuff that they've done at these camps, they brought in ground penetrating radar.
Yeah.
They've done all kinds of things. They can't even find any bones.
I know.
They haven't found anything.
Right. Right. Well, the biggest problem is not really the people that you can kill; it's getting rid of the bodies. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you do with the
Yeah.
body? I mean, if you had, now they say Auschwitz a million people went through it and were killed
Right.
there. It's like,
Right.
okay, fine. If you believe that, where's all the bodies?
Well, as I pointed out several times when I spoke, they would have been cremating bodies up into the 90s.
I know. If you're dealing 6 million, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I mean, in my investigation, and what I've come and all the information I've come to, especially the camps that like Treblinka now. I think of Treblinka, and there's nothing there. I mean, there's absolutely no
I mean,
bodies.
those
nothing.
are transit camps.
No, I don't understand.
Which simply amounts to the fact that they were railhead. They
Right.
brought people into that they sent to the other camps. What they can't seem to get through their head is that the Germans needed laborers
Right.
in the factories. You don't kill
Right.
your laborers.
Right.
If it wasn't for Auschwitz and Birkenau, the German Army and Air Corps
Right.
would have stopped functioning because they were making, that was the IG
Right.
Farben Buna rubber facility.
Right.
They were making artificial rubber. They couldn't get any real rubber because
Right,
we
right.
shut them off.
Right.
So without that, you wouldn't have any airplanes, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have any gaskets, you wouldn't have had any tires, you wouldn't have had any bushings for
Right,
the tanks.
right.
Nothing would have rolled.
Right.
So you have to keep all these people working. Now, nobody said that the Nazis were nice people.
Right.
They put all these people in prison camps to make them work.
Right.
But they also, in the camps, they treated them decently. They kept them well. They were given medicine.
Yeah. They fed 'em.
Auschwitz had a symphony orchestra. Auschwitz had a swimming pool.
Right.
All these things that...
All the amenities.
Yeah. Yes. And did they execute anybody? Yes.
Right.
They executed the people that the Jews tried themselves.
Right.
If I was a Jew and I was in the camp and I killed another Jew, they tried me, and like Pontius Pilate,
Right.
they conducted the execution.
No, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not denying that Jews weren't killed, but any Jew that was killed, I would think, would have been subversive. You know what I mean?
Right.
An enemy of the state, or they did something criminal,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Right.
But of course, you're not dealing in the millions. That's
No,
for sure.
they also used some of these prisoners in the concentration camps for medical experiments.
Right. Yeah.
They used them for high altitude tests. They pumped air out of the chambers, and I mean, we got a wealth of medical information after the war.
Right. Yeah.
And nobody raised the question, maybe we should be all nice people, and maybe we should say we shouldn't use this information that was gotten properly.
Right.
There wasn't, they murdered people to get this information.
Right, right.
So maybe this medical information should be thrown away. No.
Right.
You get the information, you use it. We took it after the war.
Right, right.
So I mean, everything they did, they had a purpose to.
Right. Yeah. Now, in regards to, why do you think that? I mean, I know the answer because I've studied it, but I mean, maybe the people here. Why do you think the Jews are so adamant against guys like you that are trying to just tell the truth? Well, I mean, what do you think the game is there?
Because we're rocking their boat.
Right.
And since World War II, Israel has been making a fortune on it.
Right.
I mean, it's an industry. They're making thousands of dollars. Germany gives millions of dollars every year to Israel,
Right.
and the average Jew believes it.
Right.
I think I may have told you one time in the past. When I was on trial for practicing as an engineer without a license, I got a call from a Jewish gentleman who lived in the Los Angeles area. And he called me up to tell me, he said, I wanted to express my opinion on this. He said, I don't think what they're doing to you is right. He says, the Jews in your area and the Jewish organizations are persecuting you the same way that we were persecuted by the Nazis, and that's wrong.
Right.
He said, but you are still a despicable person. And I says, why am I despicable? He says, because you made the gas chambers that they used at Auschwitz and Birkenau. And I said, wait a minute, let's back up a minute. What are you talking about? I said, do you know how old I am? I said, I was born in 1943. He said, oh my God, he says, I'm 10 years older than you are. And I said, yeah. He said, well, he was in the concentration camps. He said, I have a white paper that was sent out by the B'nai B'rith saying that I built the gas chambers.
Okay, so that's why they're after you.
I said to him,
Okay.
I said, would you please send me a copy of it? Oh no, I couldn't do that. I might get in trouble.
Wow.
He hung up the phone.
See, that's interesting. So what they did is they just got a lot of propaganda against you to make it look like you're like a demon, like you were killing all these people.
Right.
You made the equipment to kill them.
Lord knows what they said about me.
I mean, I didn't really, catch that one. But yeah, I can see why they'd get mad. I mean, if someone told them that.
And everything that I said in my report has been confirmed by Yad Vashem in Jerusalem.
Right.
They have a copy of the report, and they said everything Fred Leuchter said in his report for the Zundel trial is essentially correct.
Right.
However, it doesn't really matter because the Nazis were despicable people.
Right.
Well,
Right,
I mean, let's punish them for what they did.
Right.
Let's not punish them for what they didn't do.
Right.
Which is what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Germany has been abused for the last 70 years since the war.
Yeah.
They've been abused, and the people in Germany, most of them believe that they murdered all these Jews.
Yeah, I know.
And they should be. The world should be ashamed of itself for what they did.
I think more Germans died than Jews. I mean, in regards to people dying.
Probably.
They said that at the end of the war, a lot of the German soldiers were killed because they didn't feed them, and all the bombings that happened. Within the cities of Germany, they're bombing at the end of the war and killing innocent
I
people.
mean, the real Holocaust was Dresden.
Right. In those, yeah.
And there were 2 Holocausts in Japan too.
Right.
Not that I have a problem with the dropping of the bombs in Japan. I believe that they shot in the war. The problem, I don't think it was a good idea to drop the bombs because the man who was in charge of the Air Force, Curtis LeMay, he said, I can do the same thing in less than a month with firebombs. He told Truman, he said, let's not open the atomic can.
Right.
And Truman ignored him.
Right.
Because it was already determined by FDR what was going to be done. All he was carrying out the work of the Jewish brain trusts that FDR had.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think we should have dropped the bombs because we forever have a black eye for doing that when we didn't need to.
Right.
We could have done it by conventional weapons. And yes, the Japanese needed a lesson because they would have fought us with pitchforks. I mean, they would have fought us with anything they could have when they landed.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing as somebody invaded this country.
Right.
Admiral Amato said that before the war started, before Pearl Harbor, because he advised against Pearl Harbor, he said there's a there's a rifle behind every blade of grass in the United States. He said, if we defeat the military, he says, then we got to deal with the
Right,
people.
right.
And he says, we ain't going to win.
Right. Yeah. No,
So,
I can
and
see
the
that.
same thing would have happened in Japan.
Right.
We would have been fighting the populace
Right.
with stones and rocks
Right.
and you know, everything.
Yeah, they wouldn't have went down easy.
No, but I think LeMay could have done the same thing with some firebombs
Right. No, I understand.
without irradiating the planet.
Yeah. Right. They caused a big
So.
problem there. Okay. So in regards to your report, you said there's only 3 of them. Again, we just want to show
Yes.
everybody the
Yep.
report here. Original Leuchter report right there. And you would think that put that in Washington archives there. What do you call it?
Probably not in my lifetime.
Well, I mean, it is something that really has turned the tide in regards to revisionism and you know what's going on there.
Zundel's copy was lost when they firebombed his
Oh,
house.
they bombed his house
Yes.
too. Oh boy.
The one in the court, Allah knows what happened to it. The one in the court was copied by, strangely enough, the Aryan nations.
Oh.
And they printed a copy with their name on it.
Oh, really?
I had a lot of people call me and ask me about that. I says, I had nothing to do with it. It's a public record.
Right, right.
Anybody
Yeah, I mean,
could get the court transcript.
Right, and I think I might have seen it on the internet too, maybe places.
Right,
You know.
right. Well, Zundel has copies of it on his,
Right.
he doesn't anymore, but
Right.
his wife Ingrid has
Right.
copies of
Now,
it on the website.
Grandma Rudolph kind of gave some information on it. How do you
Right.
feel about what he wrote about?
Well,
did you read his book about it, or?
I did read the whole thing, but unfortunately what we've got here is we got a bit of a tempest in a teapot. People have said that Guillermo Rudolph was critical of the report.
Yeah.
He really wasn't critical. The problem is that I'm an engineer. I build things. I approached it totally different than he does. He's an egghead. He's a scientist.
Right.
He's a PhD and a chemist. He approaches everything from a theoretical standpoint.
Right.
I approach everything from a physical standpoint.
Okay, right. Two different
how to build it.
ways. I get it,
Okay.
yeah.
And you know, some of his stuff has been misunderstood. I don't know if you saw recently in the dispute with
Berg?
with Berg, yeah,
Yeah,
with Fritz Berg.
Fritz Berg.
Fritz Berg was critical of me because he said that Guillermo Rudolph said I was wrong. It isn't explosive. And Guillermo Rudolph responded by saying, I didn't say it was explosive. It wasn't explosive. What I said was, both you are right and Fred is right.
Right.
It depends. Guillermo realizes that we have 2 different approaches.
Right.
And he approached it differently than I did. And that's the only difference. Everything I said was substantially correct. I'm not a chemist. I was briefed by a chemist who was the chief chemist for DuPont in their facility for making hydrogen cyanide gas.
Right.
And he was the one that told me how to deal with it, how it works, and how the blue residue that's left is ferrocyanide and
Right.
what it is. Now, my explanation of it probably wasn't as intense as Guillermo Rudolph would have liked.
Right.
He was very much stronger, but essentially he said the same thing.
Right.
Fred and I said the same thing.
Right.
We
No, I
just came
understand.
from different.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see that Grandma was against it, but I do see that, yeah, because he's a chemist,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's a whole different frame of thought
Yes.
and how that is. On concluding up here, Fred, is there anything you would have done different when you think about what happened? I mean, you know, when you really look at your life and what happened, I mean, what do you think you could have done different that would have made it easier on you? Probably not do it, right? Not to do the not to go over to Poland and get in there and do the investigation.
Yeah, you know, the long and the short of it is that I guess I couldn't have done anything any different.
Yeah.
You know, I became involved in executions to stop torture and punishment. I was the only one who could deal with the problem that Zundel had. I thought about this a number of times. First, as an American, I believe in freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Second, I believe that anyone, wherever he is, has got a right to a proper legal defense,
Right.
no matter what his charges are.
Yeah.
Those two things lead me to say that I would have done the same thing over again, even if I knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Because Zundel had a right to defend himself.
Right.
And, he also has a right to believe what he wants, and nobody has any right to interfere with
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah.
So, Canada doesn't have a Bill of Rights like we do.
Right.
They had something that was kind of watered down that
Sure.
was, but even so, it was enough so the Supreme Court struck down what they did to us.
Right. Right. Of course, his life hasn't turned out too well. Now he's in Germany. I don't even know if he's going to be coming back to this country.
No,
Right.
he probably won't. He's probably going to die in a Black Forest where he is.
Yeah.
He's at where he used to live
Right.
when he was a youngster.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think he should be brought back to the United States, and I think she should be given citizenship. He shouldn't be separated from England.
No, I know. Yeah. Do you get a chance to talk to her yourself? Or?
No, once in a great while I talk to her on the internet. I've talked to her on the phone a couple of times. I don't really know Ingrid.
Right.
And she really doesn't know me, because we've never, it's unfortunate, because had Zundel stayed in this country, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure she would have, but
Yeah.
I keep a low profile where Ernst is concerned, because part of Ernst's release from prison is based on the fact that he doesn't associate
Right.
with any of the former criminals that he associated with, and I'm one of those criminals.
Yeah. So you're
So
you're a criminal.
I wouldn't even send Ernst.
But you haven't been arrested.
Christmas
You
card.
haven't been formally arrested, have you? Really? Have you?
Oh, but there was a warrant out for me. I was
Okay.
in prison.
Right. No, I know that. I mean,
but-
but technically you haven't been arrested.
See,
But
what
you know,
they did
you know.
by doing that, and by they dirtied and
I see.
sullied my skirt,
Right.
so that if I were to testify in a German court, I don't come off clean.
I understand.
That's what they wanted to do,
Right.
and that's what they succeeded in. It was a political move.
I understand. Yeah.
And, the fact that even if I was convicted of a crime, it wouldn't change my ability to make a determination of what the gas chambers were.
Right.
If I was a Nazi
Right.
and I was defaming the dead, it wouldn't change anything.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, that didn't happen.
Right.
But nevertheless, that's where it's at.
Right,
So,
right,
as I said, I stay away from Ernst because I don't want to cause Ernst any problems. And if I send him letters and stuff, I'm sure it would cause him trouble.
Right.
Because I'm sure they watch his mail.
Right. So basically now, every now and then you go to a revisionist meeting or some meeting every now and then.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. You kind of stay low key. You still.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been more active since I've been on Facebook
Right.
than I have in the last 15 years before that. And it's funny. I'm not careful what I say on Facebook, but what I say is the same thing I've said for the last 25 years.
Right.
I speak as the Pope does ex cathedra. I'm an expert.
Mm-hmm.
There are no other experts. There's been nobody else certified by any court on this planet. The only one that exists is me.
Right.
If it sounds pompous, then it's pompous.
Right.
But the point is, when I speak as an expert, and I speak of the things that I was requested to investigate by the court, nobody can question what I said.
Right.
And I say a lot of things on Facebook that somebody else probably would get shut down for.
Right. Okay.
I don't get shut down because I don't think they know how to do it.
Right.
Because, I mean, they could arbitrarily do that, but I think they'd cause an uproar and people would be upset. Because I'm not a neo-Nazi, I
Right.
haven't said anything that's right-wing.
Right. You just tell what the truth is about
yeah.
the topic you talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only thing I am careful about is I have people that ask me to like web pages.
Right.
And I've told them before, I, like Caesar's wife, must be above reproach.
Right.
And I'm going to maintain that position. As an expert, I'll state an opinion. My personal opinions, I keep to myself.
Right. Very good. Well, Fred, I think we've covered quite a bit here, in regards to your involvement with the revisionist movement anyway, and your expertise on the gas chamber situation. The only other thing we didn't touch was, I wanted to just touch briefly on your family and your family coming here relating to the Revolutionary War and all those things. We haven't really touched on that, and I just wanted to get a little background about you in your family with Bunker Hill. Remember we talked about that?
Yes.
And all that.
Before we do that, there is something else I'd like to comment on.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
When we talked briefly about how the Jews and the Jewish organizations destroyed my business as a manufacturer of execution equipment. I mean, these states, some of the states threatened to pass laws to prohibit the Department of Correction from Department of Corrections in these states from dealing with me. These people that are doing this have no consideration at all, and what they're doing is actually criminal because they're fostering torture. All these people that are waiting to be executed have a right to be executed humanely. And by pushing me out of the picture, they're making it so that these people that are being executed are being tortured to death. Probably the last 20 executions, almost all of them resulted in torture and priority execution. And there's nobody there to help the states any longer.
You mean right now that's it? Nobody at all?
That's right.
Wow.
And the states are operating blindly. They're having problems with the chemicals because the Europeans, and they're the only ones that make sodium pentothal, they're not supplying it to the states, and they refused. They said that we use sodium pentothal for operations.
Right, right.
And they've refused to supply sodium pentothal to the United States for needed operations if the Department of Corrections continue to use it for lethal injections.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wow.
So as a result, the states have tried to find other means of doing it, and they've had all kinds of problems. These people that have come after me, they're no more than criminals, and there's certainly no humanity in their souls at all, because they don't care if people are tortured. The only thing they care about is silencing me. They failed to do that.
Right, right.
And there's one other thing I would like to comment on, which is in the same vein. I built an electric chair for the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee hadn't used it, but they hadn't used it up until they've used it once. The Jewish element in Tennessee they pressured the Department of Correction to have the chair modified. They brought in a gentleman named Lee Weichert, who should be ashamed of himself. He's an electrical engineer that comes from the state of Arkansas. And he is responsible for the electric chair in Florida, the one that tortures everybody. He deliberately, and I say deliberately because he must know as much about the execution procedure as I do. He must have read all the material that happened in New York, or he should have. If he didn't read it, he shouldn't be building electric chairs. And he deliberately uses low voltage so it hurts. He modified my chair at the behest of the Jews in Tennessee. And he changed the voltage. They reduced the voltage and they increased the current, so now it'll hurt and it'll cook the tissue. One person was executed with it since it's been modified. We don't know if it hurt him. It looked like it was an acceptable execution, but even all of the executions with Florida's chair didn't turn out to a fiasco. But there's enough of them that has to show that the voltages that he chooses shouldn't be used. And these people that did that, they did that full well knowing that the people that are going to be electrocuted in that chair are going to be tortured to death,
Wow.
and they don't care.
Yeah, I didn't know that. No.
But, you know, they have a lot of power and they have a lot of force. I consulted with the Commissioner of Correction in the state of Mississippi relative to their gas chamber. I was asked to write a report on it. Before I had the report finished, because the Jewish organizations found out that he did that, they fired him. And the state notified me that they did not want to accept the report. And of course I wasn't paid for it. I haven't been paid for a lot of things that I did because of these problems. But the interesting thing about it is that the man who lost his job, his name was Commissioner Thigpen. He was a black gentleman. And a black man in the state of Mississippi, in the Department of Correction, has to be an exceptional person to get the job of commissioner. Because most of those southern facilities are all run by southern rednecks. Now here was a man who was good enough to get promoted to the head of the Department of Correction, the commissioner. And he was fired by the Jews because he asked me to see if the gas chamber was safe, and he didn't kill any of his guards.
Wow.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it shows you the amount of pressure
Yeah.
that's been applied all over the country.
Right.
To get at me, they would torture.
Yeah,
And
it's
risk
like
lives.
it's very mean-spirited.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Now, to get back to the other thing, you want to know about my background.
Right.
My father is 100% German. His father migrated from Germany before the turn of the century, and he fought in the Spanish-American War. His mother was born in Massachusetts of German parents. She came from the German district in Clinton, Mass. On my mother's side, my family goes back, that's the Herrick side, that goes back to the Herrick brothers that came into Salem sometime in 1622.
Wow. That
My
goes
family
way
has
back.
been here for a long time.
Wow.
They were there through the witch trials.
Wow.
They were there through everything else.
No
My
kidding.
great-great-grand uncle was with the Minutemen when the first shots were fired at Lexington.
Wow.
Okay. My other great-great, or I should say another great-great-grand uncle of mine, who never had any children, was Colonel Preskin. He was in command at Bunker Hill.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
Yes. And he's been criticized a number of times for being stupid because he fortified the wrong hill. He was supposed to fortify Breed's Hill. He was not stupid. He was an engineer. He fortified the best hill, and he almost won the battle even without ammunition.
Wow.
They didn't send him any more ammunition. That's why we lost the Battle of Bunker Hill.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. We had enough to repel the first volley of crack British Marines. We had enough ammunition to repel the second. The third volley, the third attack of the British, every other man had a bullet. And after that, they defended the hill with bayonets, and then they left. And the job was so well done that a British engineer was sent to survey the battlements that were made on Bunker Hill. And they teach the battle at Sandhurst because it was such a good job with nothing. He was sent there in the middle of the night. They had shovels and picks, and they obtained some lumber someplace. He built a very interesting battle plan that they built walls out of wood and sod that overlapped each other. and it was able to sustain three attacks of crack British Marines. They had no food, they had no water, and they had no bullets. And the general who was sitting in Harvard Square, who had promised the ammunition, he said, you go get ready to fight and we'll send the rest of the stuff up to you. He got scared and said, what if the British come across the river and attack Harvard Square? I'm going to keep all the ammunition here. And the British didn't. They came up the hill. And they, of Colonel Prescott, he was related apparently to one of the aldermen of the city of Boston, because they were standing on the hill with the British general, and they were looking over the embattlements. And before the battle started, Prescott was standing up on top of the hill, walking back and forth in plain sight so they could shoot him. But I mean, the point is, he's inspiring his men, and he's also putting a bit of the fear of God into the British. And the British general said to one of the selectmen, he said, do you know that man, will he fight? And he said, that's my brother-in-law, he'll fight. And I did fight. But anyway, so, yeah, I go back a little ways on.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's 1620s. That's pretty as far back as you can go.
And the traditions that they fought for were carried through in my family, and my mother pounded them into my head, because I believe in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and I think they're inviolate.
Right.
And when I see what some of these politicians are doing, I'm just disgusted.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, just to let you know that in regards to free speech, I mean, I played a lot of your videos on my TV program, and that's one of the reasons why they banned it. I mean, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I mean, you tell the truth, and, you know, people don't want to hear the truth, and, you know, this is what bothers me about free speech. I mean, it's only free to those who want to take your free speech away. I mean, you know, I mean, that's what it comes down to, you know. But, you know, we still keep fighting, you know, you try getting the stuff out there so people can see it.
Well, you know, unfortunately, this country seems to be going in the wrong direction. It gets worse.
Yeah.
You know, probably the worst president we've had in the last two centuries was Obama. Bush was bad.
Right.
He and his Patriot Act took away a lot of our freedoms.
Right.
They're constantly trying to take away our firearms, which are constitutionally guaranteed to protect ourselves from these politicians that are doing these things. But in the last administration of Obama, what he did was unconscionable. He, with an executive order, which executive orders are illegal, he took away habeas corpus, which is a constitutional guarantee.
Right.
Habeas corpus gives any citizen the right of being brought before a magistrate or a judge if he's been arrested. Because of the Patriot Act, you or I could be pulled off the street, sent to Gitmo, and nobody would ever know where we are, because we can no longer get them back because habeas corpus is gone. The second thing he did, which was very wrong, and it wasn't a constitutional issue, it was a legislative matter, is after the Civil War and the Reconstruction period, the military during the Reconstruction period was enforcing civil law. And after the Civil War and after the Reconstruction period, Congress sat back and they said, we never should have the military enforcing civil laws. That's why we have peace officers, not military officers. And they passed a special law called Posse Comitatus, which prevented the military from enforcing civil law. With an executive order and the stroke of a pen. And again, executive orders aren't legal, but they're enforced.
Right.
Obama wiped out Posse Comitatus.
But he could have, he should have, you know, went back and fixed it. You know what I mean? But he didn't do it. So.
No, because they're constantly eroding our freedoms wherever they are, and eventually they, you know, I think they have a problem, because I think they've been training the police for paramilitary
Right.
activities,
Yeah.
and they've been giving them weapons that they shouldn't have. They're peace officers, not
Right,
soldiers.
right, yeah.
I think they expect civil unrest. And I think when this civil unrest occurs, I think they want the military to deal with it. But I think they have a problem with the military, because although the enlisted men may follow orders, the officer corps is all Southern, or it's mostly Southern.
Right.
And they swear their allegiance to the Constitution, not the President. They have a distinction. They know the difference. Most of the military, most of the Southern officer corps went to military school and worked their way up, and then went through West Point. So they've been steeped in military tradition their whole life.
Right.
They understand what a constitution is, and they understand what a president is, and they understand that there's a separation here, and that the president can't issue orders that are unconstitutional. And I think they're going to have a problem, because if they expect the military to shoot civilians, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right, right, right.
So they're going to depend upon the police to do that.
Right, right. And that's what they're grooming them to do now.
Yes, yes.
I know, I see
And
that.
that's why they've been taking away all our rights.
Right, right. Little by little. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. Well,
Any
okay.
one of these days, you or I may wind up in Gitmo. We may be cellmates.
I don't doubt that, believe me, I don't doubt that. Well, Fred, this has been a very enjoyable discussion. This has been Fred Leuchter with me today, and Fred, you might want to look at some of the videos that are up there about his past life with the Zundel case. You can look them up there, and a wealth of information. You can hold up your book there, Fred. Here's the Leuchter report. You can also get a look at that talks about the gas chamber situation in Auschwitz and a couple of other camps. Fred did research there. This is the findings that he came up with, which again shows that they could never have ever been used for homicidal gassings. And that's something that people should know about, because that's a big problem now, especially dealing with the Holocaust issue, because that's the way the people are said to have died, because they say they were gassed with homicidal gas, Zyklon B. So that's an excellent report if you can find that out on the internet there. And also, we want to encourage people in regards to free speech and things of this sort. Think about the things that you see on the internet, particularly dealing with rights, people's rights. As Fred was saying, it seems like as time is going on now, our rights are being whittled away. Fred had to deal with it in regards to his free speech issues with the subject matter that we talked about today. I have to deal with it in my life too, with my cable shows that I used to have on TV. They took those down because of the situation and the things I talked about. Things are really getting hard out there in regards to the American public, and a lot of people aren't really concerned. They're not really looking at what's going on. So we want you to be aware, and you'll see that things are happening. It's getting worse from day to day. But anyway, hopefully, you can continue on, watching videos like this. My videos are on YouTube. If you do a search on Rizoli TV, you'll find a lot of the videos that deal with the subject matter we've been actually talking about there. Well, Fred, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And it's great hearing your Revolutionary War history. A lot of people don't know about that. I really didn't know the whole case about that, but I knew you had your lineage going back down to that period. Very interesting information. Well, I'm Jim Rizoli. I want to thank you for watching. And for Fred Leuchter, take care now. Bye.